Come hither, intrepid explorers, to the realm of the Courtier's secret embrace, where each turn of the page is an adventure crafted by StoryWave.ai. Join our expedition by liking, sharing, and subscribing for daily doses of discovery. Chapter 1: The Highland Courtship. I had always been a man of the court, my presence demanded by tradition, and my voice, deep and resonant, like the rolling highlands themselves, sought after in matters of state and triviality alike. Yet, as the ladies twirled in their gowns of silk and the men boasted in their finery, I felt a yearning for something beyond these stone walls and their gilded cages. It was amid this opulence that my gaze fell upon her, Eliza Hamilton. She was a vision, her golden hair a radiant halo, her azure eyes reflecting the starlight that dared to rival her luminance. She stood with the poise of a swan amidst a flock of peacocks, her English grace a stark contrast to the robust Scottish revelry. As the night unfolded, the strands of destiny entwined our paths. A boorish suitor, his intentions as clear as the whiskey in his grasp, cornered Eliza. His advances, unwanted as they were forceful, drew my attention. I approached, my demeanor calm yet imposing, my voice cutting through the din. "Good sir, might I suggest the evening air would benefit your spirits far more than this pursuit?" I offered, my words cloaked in civility, but edged with steel. The man, caught off guard by my interference, bristled at the challenge. Yet in the presence of a McFarland, his bravado faltered. Muttering under his breath, he retreated into the shadows of the hall. Eliza's gaze met mine, a silent exchange of gratitude passing between us. "I am in your debt, Mr. McFarland," she said, her voice a soft melody that seemed to harmonize with the strings of the chamber orchestra. "No debt to speak of, Miss Hamilton," I replied, bowing slightly. "It is but the duty of any gentleman to aid a lady in distress." Our conversation took flight, meandering through topics of literature and philosophy, each word drawing us closer in spirit. Her intellect was as sharp as the cut of her gown, and I found myself enthralled by the depth of her insight. However, as the hours waned, the reality of our stations whispered its cruel reminder. The divide between a Scottish courtier and an English noblewoman was a chasm not easily bridged. The whispers of courtiers, like the rustling of leaves in a foreboding wood, spoke of the dangers of such an entanglement. Yet, in that moment, as we shared stories beneath the watchful gaze of ancestral portraits, the world outside the ballroom walls ceased to exist. We were simply Drake and Eliza, two souls captivated by the unforeseen possibility of affection in a world governed by duty and lineage. The clock chimed, a forerunner of the dawn that would soon peel back the night's veil of secrecy. Reluctantly, we parted, the memory of our encounter lingering like the last notes of a sonnet, haunting and sweet. As I retired to my quarters, Eliza's image imprinted upon my mind. I knew that this was but the first brushstroke on a canvas of clandestine romance. The path ahead was fraught with peril, but for the first time I welcomed the uncertainty of the morrow. For in her I had discovered an ember of hope, a defiance against the cold, prescribed world, a secret embrace that promised to kindle a fire that could either illuminate our path or consume us entirely. Chapter 2: A Fateful Dance. I found myself drawn to the string quartet's tender serenade, their bows dancing upon strings in a harmony that seemed composed by the night itself. It was there, amidst the symphony of the evening, that I discovered Eliza, her presence a beamer in the soft twilight. She was attired in a gown that captured the very essence of dusk, blues and purples mingling like the sky at eventide. Her hair was pinned back, yet a few defiant curls framed her face, and her eyes sparkled with the reflection of the stars above. As I approached, a hush fell upon my heart, the anticipation of the impending dance quickening my pulse. "Miss Hamilton," I began, extending my hand with a reverence that belied the tempest within. "Might I have the honor of this dance?" Eliza's smile was a gentle incline, as the corners of her lips curled in a silent assent. Her hand, delicate yet assured, slipped into mine, and together we stepped into the rhythm of the waltz. The world contracted until there was naught but her and I, and the music that enveloped us in its tender embrace. As we moved as one, the murmurs of the night were rife with the talk of the court, an oddment of rumors and speculations that sought to define our boundaries. Yet, within the compass of our shared steps, such whispers were cast adrift, rendered impotent by the connection that hummed between us. In the brief respite between melodies, Eliza's voice, soft and melodious, dared to broach the silence. Drake this eve feels like a stolen moment, plucked from the hands of time itself. I, Eliza, I replied, the sound of her name a melody on my tongue. It is as though the stars have conspired to grant us this fleeting sanctuary. Our discourse meandered through the gardens of our thoughts, each revelation a petal unfurled. She spoke of her youth in the English countryside, where the verdant sprawl of hills whispered tales of ancient days. Her words painted a portrait of a life both privileged and confined, a gilded cage that her spirit longed to transcend. And as she listened to my own tales of the rugged highlands, where the land and sea collide in a tumultuous embrace, I could sense a yearning in her gaze, a desire to witness the untamed beauty of a world beyond her own. With each turn, each step of our dance, the spark that had ignited in our first encounter grew into a steady flame, casting shadows upon the ground we trod. The constraints of our birth and duty loomed over us, an ever-present specter that sought to douse the fire we nurtured. Yet, as the final chords of the waltz lingered in the air and our hands reluctantly parted, the warmth of Eliza's touch remained. We were left with the knowledge that something profound had taken root, a connection that defied the rigid lines drawn by society. As I watched her retreat into the throng of guests, the laughter and conversation washing over us like a tide, I knew that the dance we shared was but a prelude to a more formidable challenge. Eliza's family, guardians of tradition and lineage, would not look kindly upon a suitor such as myself. Yet, for all the opposition that lay ahead, the courage that sparkled in Eliza's eyes emboldened my own resolve. The dance may have ended, but our story, our silent secret embrace, was just beginning to unfold. Chapter 3, Whispers in the Garden. Eliza, ever the embodiment of grace, awaited in our chosen haven, nestled between the ancient oak and the babbling brook. Her silhouette, illuminated by the soft caress of moonlight, held a promise of the forbidden fruit, so tantalizing within the Eden we had crafted. Drake, her voice was scarcely more than a zephyr, a tender sound that set the foliage around us to a gentle tremor. You came. How could I not? I stepped into the sphere of her presence, the nearness of her sending ripples through the stillness of my world. The very stars seemed to compel me to your side. Our hands touched, an electric union that defied the decorum we were bound by in the light of day. Eliza's fingers were warm against my own, a covert clasp that spoke volumes more than the grandest of declarations. I fear for us, she confessed, her azure eyes reflecting the turmoil within. Each stolen moment is a treasure, but the dread of discovery. I pressed a finger to her lips, silencing her worries. Let not the shadow of fear taint the beauty of this moment, for it is ours alone. The eyes that spy by day have no dominion over the secrets of the night. Her laughter, a soft cascade that broke the somber mood, wrapped around us, a shield against the world that sought to tear us asunder. You are right, my bold Highlander. Let us savor the now, for tomorrow is a stranger to us still. We spoke then of dreams unfulfilled, of distant lands untouched by the frost of societal decree. Our words, carried on the whispers of the garden, were daring, painting a future where the shackles of convention lay broken at our feet. A brush of lips, as fleeting as the flutter of a butterfly's wings, sealed our whispered promises. The garden around us seemed to hold its breath, complicit in the tender act of rebellion that bound us ever tighter. Yet, as the soft rustle of footsteps intruded upon our sanctum, we sprang apart, hearts pounding with the sudden spike of adrenaline. A groundskeeper, lantern in hand, swept past our hiding place, oblivious to the drama he had nearly unveiled. Our eyes met in the darkness, a shared relief mingling with the thrill of our narrow escape. Drake, my heart cannot bear this, Eliza murmured once the threat had passed, her hand fluttering to her chest where the rapid beat echoed my own. Nor can mine, I admitted, the gravity of our situation settling upon me once more. But it is an attestation to the depth of what we feel that we risk so much for these precious moments. The night waned as we spoke of less perilous things, the laughter and warmth between us a balm to the anxiety that lurked at the edges of our meeting. The statues and blooms of the garden stood as silent guardians, their beauty a backdrop to the clandestine dance we had been swept into. As the first blush of dawn threatened the horizon, we parted with a lingering touch, a promise suspended in the cool morning air. The garden, with its whispers and shadows, had become a witness to our burgeoning love, a love both as delicate and as hardy as the roses that perfumed our rendezvous. Back within the solitude of my quarters, the echo of Eliza's voice, the memory of her touch, fanned the embers of my resolve. The path that lay before us was fraught with peril, but in the courage of our conviction, we found the strength to dream of a dawn where our love need not whisper in the shadows, but could sing in the light of day. Chapter 4, Confessions by Candlelight. The door's soft creak heralded her entrance, each step a silent note in the symphony of our hidden romance. She carried with her the faint scent of lavender, a soothing balm to the tumult in my breast. "Drake," she greeted, her voice a soothing balm to the tumult within me. "I have brought something for you." From the folds of her dress, she produced a folded piece of parchment, its edges worn from the journey it had taken to reach me. My fingers trembled slightly as I took it from her, the weight of her words already heavy in my hands. I unfolded the letter, Eliza watching with bated breath as her penned confessions were laid bare before my eyes. The script was delicate, a monument to the care with which she had scribed her innermost feelings. As I read, the words seemed to carve themselves into my very soul. She spoke of a love that transcended the boundaries set by birth and blood, a love that defied the ironclad rules of society. Her admission was a mirror to my own heart, and with each sentence, I felt the final barriers between us crumble into dust. "Eliza," I began, my voice steady despite the maelstrom within, "this letter, it is more than mere words. It is the key to the lock that has bound our affections." She stepped closer, her gaze laden with an intensity that matched my own. "I could not bear the silence any longer, Drake. My love for you is as boundless as the sea, and just as impossible to contain." We stood there, in the sanctity of our illuminated alcove, and spoke of dreams that had once seemed as distant as the stars above. Our plans took shape, whispered into being like delicate sculptures fashioned from hope and daring. "The risks we take are not for the faint of heart," I confessed, the gravity of our intentions settling upon me like a mantle. "To elope is to turn our backs upon everything we have known. But is it not better to choose our own destiny than to live a life dictated by others?" Eliza countered, her staunchness a landmark in the uncertainty that threatened to engulf us. "I would rather a single moment of true freedom with you than an eternity of shackles without." Her words were a clarion call, a summons to the part of me that had longed to break free from the gilded cage of court life. We were two souls, intertwined by a love that knew no master, no creed, but that of the heart. As the hours waned and the candles burned low, our plans were set. We would leave under the cover of night, stealing away to a future of our own making. The letters we exchanged would be our testament, the proof of a love that would not be denied. The library, with its silent witnesses of leather and parchment, held the echoes of our resolve. We parted with a kiss that sealed our fate, a gentle pressure of lips that spoke of the storm to come. In the solitude that followed, I sat amongst the sleeping tomes, their knowledge a sharp distinction to the uncertainty of the path we had chosen. Yet, as I held Eliza's letter close, the words inscribed upon it a landmark of our shared desire, I knew that no matter the consequences, our love was a fire that would not be quenched. Chapter 5, A Noble's Duty. "Drake," she began, her voice a tremulous note amidst the hush, "my hand, it has been promised to a duke." The words hung there, suspended in the air like a guillotine blade poised above the tenuous thread of our future. I felt a frigid draft snake through the room, though no windows were ajar. The candles flickered, casting long, sinister shadows that seemed to mock my sudden stillness. "A duke?" I managed to echo, the syllables tasting of ash in my mouth. My mind raced, careening between indignation and desperation. But how? When? Her gaze fell to her hands, clasped tightly in her lap as if they could anchor her to this moment and forestall the inevitable. "It has been in negotiation for months. My family, they are insistent. It is a union of wealth and power, they say, a noble's duty." The words duty and power churned in my mind, each a bitter pill. "And what of love?" I asked, my voice a low growl of barely contained emotion. "What of the desires of your heart?" Eliza lifted her eyes to mine, and within their blue depths I saw the tempest raging. You know as well as I that love is a luxury seldom afforded to those of our standing. The conversation shifted then, as if the walls themselves compelled us to speak of more than our own tempest of emotions. Eliza leaned in closer, her voice a conspiratorial thread. There is more at stake than my impending nuptials, Drake. I've been assisting the Jacobite cause, passing on messages, information. It's dangerous, but it's a cause my heart believes in. I reeled from her words, the implications vast and treacherous. To align with the Jacobites was to court death, to dance upon the gallows. Eliza, that is high treason, I whispered, the gravity of her confession anchoring me to my chair. She nodded, her face a mask of resolute fear. I know the risks. But if we are to carve out a future for ourselves, if we are to live in a world where our love can breathe freely, then the current regime must be challenged. I understood then the true depth of her courage, a courage that matched the fierceness of the Highland winds. And what of me? I asked. Am I to stand idly by while you risk everything? Her hand reached out, finding mine across the expanse of the oak table. I would never ask you to join this fight, Drake, but I cannot and will not abandon it. Our connection, once a tender vine, had grown into a sturdy chain that bound us together through the trials that loomed over us. The revelation of her betrothal to another was a blow, a cruel twist of fate. Yet, it was her involvement with the Jacobite cause that cast a long, dark shadow upon our love. The air grew thicker with unspoken oaths and the silent vows we made in the flickering candlelight. We were two hearts caught in the maelstrom, bound by a love that was both our sanctuary and our crucible. As the night deepened, we hatched plans with hushed urgency, the library a witness to our whispered strategy. We would need to act swiftly, boldly, if we were to outpace the noose that tightened around our future. When at last the candles had burned down to stubs, we parted with a touch that spoke volumes, each of us carrying away the weight of our confessions and the fervor of our resolve. In the solitude that followed, I paced my chamber, the rustle of my steps a restless echo. The stakes had been raised, the game of love turned deadly. Yet in the face of such adversity, our determination only hardened. We would not be cowed by duty or fear. Our love was a flame that all the brighter for the shadows that sought to smother it. Chapter 6, The Highlander's Gamble. Eliza, her golden hair cascading over her shoulders like a waterfall of pure sunlight, paced the room with a willpower that belied the turmoil I knew churned within her. To leave was to sever ties with all she held dear, to step into a chasm that promised peril as much as it did freedom. Drake, she said, halting before the hearth where the flames danced with reckless abandon, are we truly prepared for this? To flee to the Americas is no small venture. It is a new world. I stood, my own willpower a bastion against the storm of doubt. We have little choice, Eliza. The life you leave behind is one of shackles. Here we have but one fate, and it is not one written by our own hands. She nodded, the weight of her decision etched in the lines of her elegant brow. And what of you? You wager not only your life, but your honor. Is my love worth such a gamble? I crossed the room in a few determined strides, taking her hands in mine, the warmth of her skin a balm to the icy grip of fear. My honor is bound to my heart, and my heart is unequivocally yours. There is no gamble in certainty. As the night grew darker, our ally, a staunch Jacobite by the name of Fergus, arrived with news that hastened our departure. The Duke's men are growing suspicious, Drake. We must move quickly if you're to evade capture. Fergus, a man whose loyalty to the Jacobite cause was as fierce as the Highland Gaels, had become an unexpected but invaluable co-conspirator in our flight. His knowledge of the secretive paths through the moors and the contacts that could secure our passage across the sea were the keys to our liberation. Thank you, Fergus, Eliza said, her voice steady despite the tumult of her emotions. Your aid in our plight will not be forgotten. Think nothing of it, Fergus replied, his brogue thick with the accent of the Isles. What is life without a bit of rebellion for love and freedom? With our scant belongings bundled, we stole from the safety of my quarters, the castle a looming specter of our past lives. The journey through the night was fraught with tension, every snapped twig a call to arms, every shadow a potential betrayer. We traversed the heather-strewn hills under the cloak of darkness, the stars our silent guardians. Eliza's breath came in soft puffs in the crisp air, her determination a flame that guided us onward. As we neared the coast, where the briny scent of the sea mingled with the earthiness of the land, the distant barking of hounds shattered the stillness. "They're on to us," I breathed, my hand tightening around Eliza's. Fergus, ever our vigilant sentinel, led us through a maze of hidden trails, his intimate knowledge of the land our greatest ally. "This way," he urged, guiding us down a narrow path that wound its way through the gorse and bracken. The sounds of pursuit grew fainter as we pressed on, the promise of the ship that awaited us a landmark in the night. The peril of our journey, the risk of our very lives, seemed a small price to pay for the taste of freedom that beckoned us forward. At last, the harbor came into view, the masts of the ships rising like slender fingers grasping for the heavens. Fergus led us to a modest vessel, its sails furled in anticipation of the voyage. Eliza's grip on my arm tightened as we boarded, her eyes scanning the horizon that would soon swallow us whole. "We are doing this," she whispered, a mix of awe and fear in her voice. "We are," I confirmed, my heart thundering with the gravity of our actions. "Together we will forge a new destiny, one where love is the only chain that binds us." As the ship slipped its moorings and began to drift from the harbor, the first light of dawn kissed the edge of the world. It was a sunrise of beginnings, of a gamble that had set us upon a path fraught with unknowns, yet rich with the promise of a life where our love could flourish, unencumbered by the dictates of birthright and duty. Chapter 7. The Clandestine Conclave. There, in the clandestine conclave, where the whispers of rebellion had long echoed, a trusted circle of Jacobite sympathizers gathered. The torches flickered, their flames casting an amber glow that painted our faces with the colors of determination and defiance. Fergus, his features etched with the lines of many covert operations, stood at the fore, his eyes reflecting the fire's fervent dance. "We must be swift," he counseled, the Scots burr of his voice a low rumble. "The crown's eyes and ears are as numerous as the stars." Eliza, standing beside me with the poise of one born to nobility, yet wielding the heart of a rebel, nodded. "Our passage to the Americas must be secured with cunning and care. The slightest misstep could see us all undone." I listened, my own heart beating a staccato rhythm, as the murmurs around us wove into an intricate ragbag of plans and contingencies. Maps, spread upon a makeshift table of stone, were scrutinized under the glow of the torchlight, each route a lifeline that could just as easily become a noose. "A ship, the Caledonia's Grace, is docked in Inverness," I imparted to the group, my research within the court's library now bearing fruit. "Its captain is known to me, a man with little love for the crown and a healthy respect for gold." Murmurs of approval undulated through the gathering, the collective breath of the assembly visible in the cool night air. Yet as our conclave delved into the minutiae of our escape, a sharp whistle cut through the night, a warning that chilled our marrow. Eliza's hand found mine in the darkness, her grip firm. "We must away," she whispered, her urgency a palpable force. As the assembly dissolved into the shadows from whence they came, Fergus motioned to a narrow defile that wound its way through the towering rocks. "This way. It will lead us back to the moor, away from prying eyes." We traversed the hidden paths of the highlands, the land itself a labyrinth that protected its children. Our breaths came heavy, the air sharp in our lungs, as we put distance between ourselves and the danger that nipped at our heels. Once we deemed the threat sufficiently allayed, our pace slowed, and Eliza released a breath she had been holding. "That was too close for comfort," she admitted, the moonlight bathing her face in an ethereal glow. "It was," I agreed, feeling the weight of the night's risks and revelations. "But it underscores the necessity of our cause, not just for us, but for all who yearn for a life unshackled by tyranny." Eliza, her golden hair a luminous halo in the darkness, turned to me, her eyes alight with fervor. "This information I carry," she said, tapping the hidden pocket in her gown. "It could turn the tide for the Jacobite cause. We must ensure it reaches the right hands before we depart." I understood then the full scope of her commitment, not just to our love, but to the freedom of a nation. "I will see it done, Eliza. Together, we will set this course, not just towards a new horizon for ourselves, but for the hope it represents." The journey back to the cover of the estate was fraught with the echoes of our close encounter. each step a reminder of the precipice upon which we tread. Yet, as we slipped once more through the embrace of the estate's gates, the lingering fear was overshadowed by a renewed commitment to our cause. Our love, forbidden though it may be, had become the crucible in which our conviction was forged. It was the flame that lit our path through the darkest of nights, the compass by which we would navigate the treacherous waters that lay ahead. And as the first light of dawn began to seep into the sky, painting the world in hues of hope, I knew that our love, emboldened by the trials we faced, would be the torch that guided us to the shores of our new life. Chapter 8: Vows by the Sea. Eliza's silhouette was sculpted by the moon's soft luminescence, the gentle sea breeze playing with her golden locks. She turned to me, her azure eyes glinting with the reflected light of 1,000 distant suns, and in her hands she held a small, ornate box crafted from the finest oak. "Drake," she began, her voice a melody that harmonized with the sound of the waves. "This is my legacy, passed down through generations of Hamiltons. It's a compass, said to have guided my ancestors across perilous journeys." She opened the box, revealing the aged brass instrument, its needle quivering as though alive with anticipation. "And this," I said, retrieving a small wrapped parcel from my coat, "is the McFarland dirk, a blade that has seen the blood of battles and the soil of our lands. It is a symbol of our flexibility, of our will to fight for what we hold dear." Our exchange was more than mere tradition. It was a sacred act, a demonstration to our unity in the face of the unknown horizons that beckoned. The heirlooms we offered were not just relics of the past, but promises of the loyalty and guidance we would provide each other in the life that lay ahead. Eliza clasped the dirk, her fingers tracing the intricate patterns etched into its hilt before securing it at her side. In turn, I took the compass, feeling the weight of her heritage in my palm. "With these," I vowed, "we carry with us the spirit of our lineages and the courage to forge a new path." She nodded, a silent covenant passing between us. "We stand at the precipice of a great undertaking, my love. To leave behind all that we know, to embrace an uncertain freedom, it is a daunting prospect." "Indeed it is," I agreed, my gaze locked with hers, "but there is no trepidation that can sway my commitment when I stand beside you. Our love is the marker that will guide us through the tempests, and our bond is the anchor that will hold fast against the currents of adversity." We spoke then of the morrow, of the ship that would carry us away from the shores of our birth, the Caledonia's Grace. Our words wove an oddment of the life we envisioned, one of self-determination and the pursuit of a happiness unmarred by the fetters of draconian tradition. As the hours slipped by, the tide ebbed and flowed, a rhythm as constant as the beat of our hearts. We remained there, enshrouded in the sanctity of the night, our pledges of love and fidelity echoing into the vastness of the sea and sky. The promise of dawn began to paint the horizon with the first strokes of light when we finally retreated from the cliff's embrace. The symbolic exchange of our family treasures had sealed our fates, intertwining our futures as surely as the stars that had borne witness to our vows. Retracing our steps back to the temporary shelter that had become our sanctuary, the gravity of our imminent departure weighed heavily upon us. Yet for all the uncertainty that lay ahead, the steadfastness of our commitment to one another was as unwavering as the earth beneath our feet. In the quiet that preceded the day's awakening, I lay beside Eliza, the compass and dirk resting on the table beside us, silent sentinels of our love and our audacious gamble for a life of our own making. And as sleep claimed us in the dwindling twilight, our dreams were filled with visions of distant shores and the boundless future we would shape together, hand in hand. Chapter 9: Storm of Peril. Eliza stood at the helm, her figure a defiant statue against the howling winds, her golden hair whipped into a frenzy by the gale. I had seen her stand with dignity in the courts of the land, but here, amidst the chaos of the tempest, she was a force of her own, steadfast and unyielding. "Drake," she called out, her voice barely carrying over the din of nature's fury. "The mainmast is at risk." I made my way across the heaving deck, the boards slick with the ocean's froth. The crew, a hardy band of souls each one, fought against the storm's siege, their faces etched with the determination born of those who have faced Neptune's rage before. The mainmast, a proud spire of wood and rope that had stood as a corroboration to human ingenuity, now threatened to snap like a twig in the storm's grasp. I joined the crew, hauling on lines with a fervor fueled by desperation, when a rogue wave, a behemoth born of the abyss, crashed upon us with the force of an avalanche. In that moment, time slowed to a crawl. I saw Eliza, her eyes wide with horror, as the wave bore down upon us. I moved without thought, propelled by the singular need to ensure her safety. We collided. The world turned to a frothing, roaring maelstrom, and then darkness claimed me. When consciousness returned, it was to the jarring pain that racked my body and the taste of salt on my lips. The storm still raged, but with a touch less malice, as if having spent its initial ire. Eliza knelt beside me, her face a canvas of concern, her hands gentle as they assessed the damage. "Drake, you saved me," she said, her voice a torch in the dim confines below deck where I now lay. But at what cost? My head swam, the details of the injury unclear, but the sharp lance of pain that accompanied each breath left no doubt as to its severity. "It is nothing," I lied, my words a feeble attempt to assuage her worry. "A small price for your safety." Eliza's gaze bore into mine, searching for the truth I sought to shield her from. "We embarked on this voyage to escape the chains of our past, but not for you to be martyred by my side." I reached for her hand, the simple act sending tremors of pain through my frame. "There is no storm, no peril that I would not face for you, Eliza." Our conversation then turned to the nature of the journey we had undertaken. The storm outside mirrored the tempest of doubts and fears that had occasionally whispered within us. To venture into the unknown was to invite both wonder and terror, and as the ship pitched and rolled, so too did our thoughts. Yet even as the vessel's timbers shrieked in protest and the cries of the crew echoed like the calls of lost souls, the bond between Eliza and me held firm. Our love, tested in the crucible of nature's unbridled wrath, emerged not weakened but determined. As the hours passed, the storm began to abate, its departure as sudden as its onset. The sea calmed, the once raging waves now gentle swells that cradled the ship in a soothing embrace. Eliza remained by my side, her presence a comfort that transcended the physical pain. Together, we had weathered the fury of the heavens, our commitment to each other and to the promise of our new life unshaken. In the aftermath of the storm, as the first rays of dawn broke over the horizon, the crew set to repairing the damage inflicted by the night's assault. And as I lay there, Eliza's hand in mine, the future once again stretched before us, a canvas upon which we would paint our destiny, come what may. Chapter 10. The Price of Freedom. As the ship made its final approach, the wooden planks of the docks came into focus, a jigsaw of weathered timber and iron bolts. The scent of the sea mingled with the aroma of pine and earth, the perfume of a land untamed and ripe with possibility. Eliza, with her innate grace, moved about our cramped cabin, gathering the scant possessions that would accompany us into this new chapter. Her movements were efficient, yet there was an undercurrent of hesitation in her touch, a silent acknowledgement of the weight of the unknown. "Drake," she said, her voice steady despite the undercurrent of uncertainty, "we are here. Are you ready for what comes next?" I took a deep breath, wincing as the motion tugged at the tender flesh of my wound. "Ready as one can be for a life unscripted," I replied, mustering a smile for her sake. "But Eliza, the specter of our past, it haunts me still. What if our flight was for naught?" She paused, her hands resting on the lid of our sea chest. "Our past is a shadow that stretches long, but it cannot eclipse the light of our resolve. We have braved too much to falter at the precipice of our dreams." I admired her conviction, a fortitude that seemed to stem from the very core of her being. It was a strength I drew upon as we disembarked, our feet finding the solidity of the new world for the first time. The hustle of the port was a dissonance of shouts, the creaking of ropes, and the clamor of commerce, a symphony of life in its rawest form. The days that followed were a maelstrom of acclimatization. Eliza, her knowledge of healing arts both a blessing and a rarity in this fledgling society, took to nursing me back to health with a vigilance that spoke of her deep care. "You must rest, Drake," she would admonish gently whenever my impatience got the better of me. "Your body has endured much, and we have time yet to chart our course in this land." True to her word, as strength returned to my limbs and vigor to my spirit, we began to lay the foundations of our future. We spoke at length with settlers, merchants, and other souls who had ventured across the sea in search of their own freedoms. One evening, as we sat by the glow of the hearth in our modest lodgings, a plan began to take shape. We could start a trade, I suggested, the flickering firelight casting a warm glow on Eliza's contemplative face. I've heard tell of a demand for tobacco, and the soil here is ripe for such a crop. Eliza considered this, her fingers absently tracing the grain of the wooden table that stood between us. A trade, yes, she mused. But let us not forget the lessons of our past. We must build a life not on the exploitation of this land, but in harmony with it. Her words were a guiding principle, a compass by which we would navigate our new existence. Together, we would build a life founded on the values that had drawn us together: love, freedom, and a respect for the land that had offered us sanctuary. As the days turned to weeks, our plans solidified into action. We negotiated for parcels of land, sought out seeds, and engaged with the local community, our reputations as honest and hard-working settlers growing with each passing day. The threat of our past, however, was never far from our minds. We knew that the reach of the crown was long, and our actions as Jacobite sympathizers could one day resurface to challenge the peace we had found. But for every whisper of fear, there was a stronger shout of defiance within our hearts. The price of freedom, we had learned, was eternal vigilance, a constant balancing act between the life we wished to lead and the dangers that we had left in our wake. Yet, as Eliza and I gazed upon the fields that would one day bear the fruits of our labor, we knew that the gamble had been worth it. For in the end, we had each other, and a future that, while uncertain, was ours to shape. And there, under the vast expanse of the New World sky, our love, unbidden, unfettered, and unbroken, was the landmark that would guide us through whatever storms may come. Chapter 11, Entwined Destinies. Drake, a voice, grave and hushed, pulled me aside. It was Matthias, a man whose friendship I had come to value in the weeks since our arrival. His eyes darted about the square before locking onto mine. Word is, there are missives from across the sea, missives that seek to unfurl the past you thought left behind. My heart tightened, a cold grip that threatened to squeeze the very breath from me. Are you certain of this, Matthias? I questioned, my voice a whisper, a facsimile of calm I did not feel. Aye, he confirmed, his hand resting upon my shoulder in a gesture of solidarity. I know not the content, but the seal upon the letters bears the mark of the crown. The news struck like a blade, threatening to unravel the fragile welter of the life Eliza and I had woven with such care. I thanked Matthias, my mind a tumult of strategies and contingencies, and made my way to the modest abode that Eliza and I had fashioned into a home. Eliza, her golden hair catching the late afternoon sun that streamed through the open window, turned from her work at the hearth. Drake, what troubles you? She asked, her intuition always keen to the shifts in my demeanor. We must prepare, I said, closing the door behind me. Our past, it has followed us here. The gravity of the situation settled upon us, a shroud that threatened to smother the life we had built. We sat at our wooden table, the one that had been the bedrock of countless plans and dreams, and spoke of the future, now uncertain once more. We cannot let them tear us asunder, Eliza said, her hands clasped atop the table, her knuckles white with determination. We have fought too hard, risked too much. I know, I replied, my hand covering hers, a silent vow passing between us. We will face this together, enough as we have faced all else. But to do so, we may need to call upon the bonds we have formed in this place. The following days were laden with an undercurrent of urgency. We met with those colonists we had come to call friends, those who had shared with us the struggles of taming this new land. In whispers, we divulged the specter of our past, each revelation a gamble of trust. To our surprise and relief, the bonds we had forged held true. You are one of us now, declared John, a man whose hands bore the calluses of hard work and whose heart matched the breadth of the land he tilled. Let the crown come. They will find no quarter here. The disposition was echoed by others, a chorus of defiance that bolstered our spirits. In this twist of fate, we found not scorn or betrayal, but a kinship that transcended the divisions of ocean and origin. Eliza and I stood side by side, our hands intertwined as we faced the gathering of our newfound allies. Your loyalty is a gift we can scarce repay, Eliza addressed them, her voice carrying the strength of her conviction. But know this, we will stand with you, as you have stood with us. The days that followed were tense, the threat of discovery, a specter that loomed over every moment. Yet, as we worked our fields, as we broke bread with our neighbors, as we lay under the canopy of stars that blanketed the Virginian night, we knew that we had sown the seeds of a true community. Our destinies, once so fiercely individual, were now entwined not only with each other, but with the fate of this colony. And whatever the morrow might bring, we would face it with the unity of a people bound by more than mere land. We were bound by the very essence of what it meant to be free. Chapter 12, Shadows and Sacrifice. Eliza emerged from the doorway, her hands wrapped in the apron that had become her companion in our new world. Her eyes, those pools of steadfast azure, met mine with a silent question. The serenity of the morning belied the storm that was brewing on the threshold of our hard-earned peace. "They've sent a hunter," I said, the words tasting like ash upon my tongue. "A man whose sole purpose is to drag us back across the ocean into the shackles we escaped." Her lips parted in a gasp, the color draining from her cheeks as the morning sun crested the horizon, spilling light over the fields we had sown with hope and sweat. "What are we to do, Drake?" she asked, her voice a tenuous thread in the patchwork of uncertainty that had enveloped us. "We stand our ground," I replied, my will hardening like the iron of the plowshares we used to break the soil. "We have built more than a home here, Eliza. We have forged a community." The day wore on, the sun climbing to its zenith as we prepared for the confrontation that would determine the course of our destinies. The colonists, our neighbors and friends, gathered in solidarity, their faces etched with the same determination that had brought them to this new world. It was midday when the bounty hunter arrived, astride a horse that seemed as dark as the intentions he bore. He was a man of grim countenance, his eyes like flint, and his coat a patchwork of leathers and furs, a vivid disparity to the simplicity of our attire. "I come for the fugitives," he declared, his voice booming across the open land by order of the crown. Eliza stepped forward, her stature regal, a defiance born not of nobility but of righteousness. "We are no one's fugitives," she proclaimed. "We are free people, and this land is our sanctuary." The bounty hunter dismounted, his boots thudding upon the earth with the finality of a judge's gavel. "There's a price on your heads," he sneered, and I aimed to collect. The air was thick with tension, the gathered crowd a silent witness to the standoff. I took my place beside Eliza, my hand finding the hilt of the McFarland dirk she had secured to her waist. "Then you will find the cost too steep," I countered, my voice steady despite the hammering of my heart. A murmur rippled through our allies, a wave of unspoken support that bolstered our courage. The bounty hunter, sensing the unity of our front, hesitated. It was a moment of uncertainty, a crack in the facade of his confidence. As the standoff continued, the sun began its descent, casting long shadows across the land. It was in the twilight hour that the confrontation reached its zenith. The bounty hunter, having underestimated the will of a people united, found himself outnumbered and outmaneuvered. In the cloak of dusk, a scuffle ensued, a chaotic dance of desperation and survival. When the dust settled, the bounty hunter was gone, his whereabouts as mysterious as the shadows that enveloped the land. Eliza and I returned to the sanctuary of our home, the silence of the night, a vivid disparity to the turmoil of the day. "What have we sacrificed?" she pondered aloud, her gaze lost in the flickering flames of the hearth. "Perhaps it is not a matter of sacrifice," I mused, my arm encircling her shoulders, "but rather a colloquy to the strength of our love and the bonds we have forged." In the heart of the night, as the world around us lay in slumber, Eliza and I contemplated the future that still lay unwritten. The threat of our past may have been repelled, but the fight for our future was a flame that would never be extinguished. In each other, we had found an ally against the tides of fate, our love the compass that would guide us through whatever storms may come. Chapter 13, New Horizons. Our dwelling, modest yet sturdy, was the culmination of countless days spent beneath the sun's ardent gaze, the wood hewn from the very forests that whispered of freedom. It was here, in the embrace of the new world, that we would carve out our destiny, unshackled from the fetters of our former lives. Eliza, her countenance aglow with the sweat of honest toil, approached with a pitcher of cool water drawn from the nearby stream. "Drake," she said, her voice imbued with the warmth of the afternoon, "look at what we have accomplished." I accepted the water, the liquid a balm to my parched throat. "Indeed," I replied, surveying the fruits of our labor. "It is more than I had dared to dream." The sun began its descent, casting elongated shadows that danced upon the walls of our homestead. We sat upon our porch, the wooden planks still redolent with the scent of pine, and shared our thoughts as the day bled into twilight. "Do you reckon we'll ever be free from the whispers?" Eliza asked, her gaze following the flight of a hawk above. "The tales of our past?" I considered her words, the question a lingering specter that had trailed us across the sea. "Perhaps not," I conceded. "But let the whispers come. They are but echoes, and we, my love, are the living truth." We spoke then of the morrow, of the crops we would plant, and the community we would nurture. Our dialogue was a river, meandering through topics of import and trivialities alike, each word a stone upon which we built our shared existence. As nightfall drew its cloak over the land, the stars emerged, pinpricks of light in the vast canvas above. It was beneath this celestial dome that we found ourselves in the company of our fellow settlers, the firelight from the gathering illuminating faces etched with stories of their own. "Drake," Eliza John intoned, his voice carrying across the circle of kinship, "yours is a tale that will be etched in the record of this place, a testament to the enduring power of love and liberty." Murmurs of accord rose from the gathering, a chorus of affirmation that filled the cool night air. Eliza and I exchanged a glance, a silent communication that spoke volumes of our shared journey. The fire crackled, casting an amber glow that kissed the faces of those assembled. It was in this communion, this fellowship of dreamers and doers, that I found clarity. Our purpose was not solely in the land we tilled or the home we had built, but in the example we set. As the fire dwindled to embers and the assembly dispersed to their respective abodes, Eliza and I remained, our hands clasped, our hearts full. The whispers of our legend might echo in Jamestown, but it was the love that had guided us through tempests and trials that would be our true legacy. And so, as we retired to the sanctuary of our homestead, the stars overhead witnesses to the silent vows we renewed, I realized that our purpose was intertwined with the very essence of this place. We had sought freedom, but in the end, we had found so much more. For in the vastness of the Americas, in the wild expanse that stretched boundless before us, we had discovered the infinite capacity of the human spirit to overcome, to love, and to begin anew. This was our new horizon, and together, we would greet the dawn of each day with the unwavering certainty that here, in this land of promise, our hearts would forever be entwined. And so, our story concludes. Thank you for tuning in to the Courtier's Secret Embrace with us. StoryWave.ai transforms your ideas into narratives that echo. Please like, share, and subscribe to journey through more stories every day. March 2024. See you on the next adventure.